So, okay.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to your most recent episode or newest episode of How to Be an Artist. It's a creator profile today with Gita Joshi of the Curator's Salon. And I just want to give you guys a brief background of Gita before I say hello to her and we start our chat. If you didn't yet read my introduction to her, either via our email or Facebook group, she runs Orso Major, which is an award-winning gallery, which was at Waterloo till 2016, and now it's moved online. And I have links, and any links I share today, of course, I'll post in the video in the comments section after we're done talking live. She's run things like open studio programs, helped with artist charities, organized open art exhibitions. There's so many things that Gita has done and so much wisdom she can share with us today. So thank you so very much, Gita, for being here with us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I know there are so many people in this community who will see you as a valuable resource for them. So can you first tell us when you first came to your realization of how much the arts is important to you?
Yeah, I think when I was going through school, I was just, doing all the subjects that you were meant to be doing. And it wasn't until I did my A-levels, which is in the UK, we do that from 16 to 18 before university. And I picked up art history at that point. And that's when I realized actually this was a subject that I was just never satisfied with learning. There was always more. It was fascinating. It really resonated with me. And so I went on to do a history of art degree. So that's really how that all started. And then after university, I worked for a Royal Commission. I worked for an architect's practice and architectural consultancies. And then I sort of took a sideways step into finance. And all through this time, I was still kind of had one foot in the arts because I was still going to visit like the big exhibitions like the Royal Academy and National Gallery and things because I'm based in London. So I was fortunate enough to have, the opportunity to do that. But I was also doing other things like evening classes, really just to, just have some kind of creative outlet. But I never really wanted to be an artist, but I was just really fascinated by a lot of processes and things like that. And then I would do a lot of voluntary work as well. Like I was volunteering with London Open House and various other places. But it was all very art history based. So it wasn't until I started curating at Central St. Martin's, I can't remember when that was, maybe 2010 or something like that, that I realized actually there was a way of bringing my sort of interest in the arts and then combining that with my experience in the commercial space. So it really that's how it all kind of came together, working with contemporary art.
That's so interesting. So it really sounds like it was a very organic kind of natural step. That kind of one thing opened a door for something else. So it's not, you didn't have, some people feel like you have to like know what you want for yourself in the career and, in any career. So, and it sounds like instead you kind of found your way through it. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I definitely did. It was, I think, that Steve Jobs quote, right? You can only join the dots looking backwards. Mm. And yeah, that was it. I think once I'd sort of done the curatorial training and I realized, there was a way for me to sort of actually make a living from this, work in this industry full time, essentially bringing my business experience. And then I did more sort of entrepreneurial training because obviously I was starting a small business, not like the investment banks I've been working with. It all really just came together and I really just found my flow with it, and kind of put myself out there. I was given the opportunity to sell at an art fair up in Manchester in the north of England. And I sort of embraced that. And that was really my first step into the commercial space.
That's lovely. Can you give us kind of a brief introduction to what it's like to curate something?
Yeah, it's on one hand, it's kind of quite an organic thing, but on the other hand, what you realize is that you're actually all the time you're absorbing information, you're making connections with artists, you're seeing work. And I find that for me, when I'm curating, it's all kind of coming together and that's a beautiful thing,
Yeah, absolutely. What's something, now that you have had this experience working with artists and curating and running a gallery yourself, what's a common mistake that you see artists make when they're trying to seek a relationship with a stakeholder like someone who runs a gallery?
Oh, there's so many.
Well, go ahead, share
Unfortunately.
more than one.
So, okay, so when I had the gallery space, we would get lots of artists that would come in looking for representation, and that we had no relationship with them at all. I hadn't ever seen them online. I'd never come across their work. They weren't on my mailing list. They didn't come to my private views. So I would definitely say go out and, sort of do all those things, right? If you're interested in a gallery and you like what they're doing, join their mailing list, turn up at their private views, and don't pitch them straight away. The other thing is showing artwork on your phone when you then do walk into a gallery. Your phone is really small. It's like, 4 inches or something. And then they're telling me about, this 6-foot artwork that they've made or something like that. And it just isn't a really good representation of either the artist or the artwork. The next thing that sort of follows on from that is choosing the galleries that actually are an appropriate fit for you. So obviously, now we're in the digital age. There's a lot of research you can be doing before you actually open those conversations around representation. So what I found was that people were pitching artists that I didn't sell. I've had a very strong focus, which I still do, on process-led artwork, such as etchings and traditional printmaking, or mixed media, which is heavily collage based and things like that. But people would try to pitch me abstract work and things, which I am interested in, but I don't sell it.
Right.
It's a show that I might curate, but it's not something that was appropriate for the gallery and the brand that I was building up. So really doing the research around, which galleries to approach.
I think that's great advice. There's so many times, I think, the stories I hear from people in the community, there's so much fear and it's kind of almost insecurity around presenting themselves. And sometimes I wonder if that is what leads to people kind of just showing up at a gallery and kind of bursting out with like, here's my work, like kind of like word vomit, like here's everything. And we'd feel so much more confident if we could do that homework, do the research, really make sure that the kind of work we make is something that gallery wants. And like you said too, let's not present it on a phone. What's a way we can really show off our work that shows that we really have value and respect for the work we create, but also makes it easy for the person looking at the work too. Yeah, I think this is great advice. Thank you so much, Gita. So tied to all this, you've actually started a podcast as well called the Curator's Salon. Why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, so at the start of last year, I started a podcast. It was something that was on my mind for such a long time. Then I just took the bold step and went ahead and did it. The first couple of episodes, I made sure I had friends on to, make it easier. And it's not unlike an artist, like really going out there and putting yourself out there. You're putting it in the public domain and it can be a bit nervy. But it was something I just really wanted to do. I really enjoyed listening to podcasts. I think I had a lot of value to share. And, a lot of the work I'd been doing with artists was, having great conversations. And I just felt really that I needed to bring them into the public domain. So that's how that podcast really came about. And then we had a bit of a quiet time last summer. And then from about, I think, August, September, it's been, it's getting in its stride. And I know you were a guest as well, which was great to meet you then.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
So the podcast, mostly it is artist interviews, artists in conversation. And the other thing that I do on there is also share a lot of business advice as well. So we had a recent episode about pricing. We had one with Danielle Prahl about mindset for artists. I've done quite a bit about artist fairs, which is what I'm talking about in my group a lot at the moment. So I did an episode about artist fairs, and we'll have one coming out soon about, that sort of preparing when you've got your fair booked, you know that it's coming up, and it's just that last bit of preparation that, so you turn into the best-selling booth.
Yeah, that's great. I've read a lot recently saying that fairs and pop-ups seem to be kind of the new places for artists to, or not necessarily new, but like a more popular focus now for artists to sell, promote, and develop kind of networking connections.
Absolutely. I mean, I think they're great because, if fairs take a commission, it's a very small commission. It's a great way for an artist to sort of meet a new audience because, ordinarily they might have been showing from their studio. I think it's a really great first step out of the studio. You build a community, you get relevant people through the door. You can actually, you're putting your work in a relationship with an audience, and actually an art buying audience. That's why people go to fairs. They go to seek out new talent. So I think, they're definitely a great step. And I know certainly in London and the fairs are everywhere now. They're in all the small towns, they're in all the big towns, but they're definitely a great first step for artists that want to step out of the studio and show their work.
That's great. You mentioned too, you have a Facebook group. So what's that community about?
So that community the Facebook group is called Studio to Retail. And essentially it's for makers and artists who are looking to turn their practice, develop it into a business. We've got a lot of advice in there at the moment around artist fairs, as I said, particularly. I'll be doing more material around open studios as well. So yeah, it's really just about the business side of the art world.
Great. Well, for all of you who are watching this who are interested, don't worry again. I'm going to make sure all these links that were being shared with us are linked below this video, and you'll have access so that you can soak up all of Gita's wisdom as well. So something I want to talk about, kind of changing gears here for a minute, is we kind of have two groups of people in this community. We have some who are here because they enjoy art. It's a hobby. They don't have an interest in selling, and they're happy to just make art, which I think is a valuable thing. And then we have some artists who are engaged in selling and trying to sell. And we kind of have these people in between who are thinking about it, but there's definitely a group that has resistance to this idea of selling. I think they immediately think of words like selling out, or they think they're going to have to change their work and voice because there's only a certain kind of market for art, and therefore the work that they really feel called to create won't be of value to people. Do you have any kind of suggestions or kind of advice that you could offer people who are feeling resistance around this kind of topic?
Yeah, I mean, that is often the typical sort of artist that might come into the gallery and talk about and wanting to sell their work, or, look for representation. And they've just done it too prematurely. They think that the gallery is going to sort of take on that work for them, and then everything is offloaded, and they can just go back to the studio, make the work, and the gallery will manage everything. And unfortunately, it's not like that. Over the years that this word sort of, things like freelancer and entrepreneur and all of these have sort of blended. But, artists have always known that actually they have to manage their own careers. And I think it's a really important point to reiterate that, you might be working with one gallery, but that might not be the sustainable income. You might, you might license some work. But again, that's, you need to be having all these threads working for you all the time if you want to go into selling art full time or make a full-time living from it. But in terms of the resistance, I think it's getting better at sharing your own story. I think starting on social media is a great place because really you want to sort of just build that audience for yourself, and doing that sort of slowly at your own pace on social media is a great way to get both validation, to get feedback, and to start building those relationships. And you can do it slowly. It's fine, and that's it really. I mean, you can, sell directly as and when you're ready.
Exactly. And I hope too, for those of you watching, you also see too, I think sometimes we feel like if we make art, it has to be something we sell, but that's not what either of us are saying here. If this is something you want, these are the steps you need to be taking, and these are the things you need to be thinking about and owning for yourself if you want your art life to be also a business. And you need to be able to use that word business and not feel so icky around it. So thank you, Gita. I think that's really, really helpful. I also know, kind of tied to this, and in a conversation we had outside of this video, I was sharing with Gita that I definitely have met many artists who are like, I just want to be in my studio. I don't want to be the one that has to manage my social media or deal with emails or try to network with galleries. Why can't I just find someone to do it for me? And I was kind of joking like that's a myth. And Gita was like, well, actually, that's part of what I do. So can you tell us more about that and the service you offer?
Yeah, sure. So I offer various things. So one is mentoring, and that's often just for artists who are a bit stuck or they don't know the next steps, or they've got an idea of where they want to go, but they just need some sort of, professional development, sort of eyes on it, somebody that's in the industry to help them figure out what that would be. So there's that side of things. But what I found was this, and through my group as well, was that people are still resistant to taking the action because they are too scared to, for example, approach the gallery or apply for a commission, or sometimes even the smaller things that, you and I are okay with, like sending out a regular newsletter. And so the work I do with some of those artists is to basically do that for them. So it's a combination of mentoring, coaching, business consultancy, and it's a bit like having a virtual studio assistant, having me in your business, helping you write out those things. We pull the trigger on the MailChimp and, make sure that your audience is staying sort of interested in what you're doing. So it's some of the business practicalities, to just keeping you on track and getting that momentum in your business.
Yeah, great. So there are people out there, should you really not want to be doing some of this yourself, but also remember too, there's always investments. And if you're going to invest in your business in this way, it is an investment and you need to take that seriously for yourself. And it could be a way for you to step up and really own what you want to do with your art and take yourself more seriously. So there are ways to outsource tasks and things that you may not want to do yourself for your art so that you can have more time in the studio. But it's about being creative and thinking of all this as a business and how can you fund certain things and how do you want to distribute your time and energy. So talking about social media posts and blogs or emails, you said that a lot of times people don't want to write the kind of a regular email to community, and I definitely have heard the same kind of resistance. Can you offer some tips for people who want to start taking this more seriously and show up either more consistently on social media or through their blog or through an email newsletter?
Yeah, sure. One of the things that I hear a lot from artists is that they don't know what to say. They don't know what to talk about. A lot of the sort of common advice is to talk about your process when you're making art and things like that, which I totally agree with. That is great, and that's definitely valuable sort of material and really interesting for your audience. But there's this quote that I really like from Oscar Wilde that is, when artists meet for dinner, they talk about money. And when bankers meet for dinner, they talk about art. And so I think, we have a duty, if you really want to kind of get known, get seen, is to be talking about your work and talking about you as the artist and the maker. And it doesn't always have to be about process. It can be other aspects that sort of feed your inspiration, or it can be other things that you've done. I think I often talk about sort of reminding people perhaps that you've had other experiences in your life, because it's really the artist, the maker, that is so fascinating to people that are not in this industry. And that is what you really need to be sharing. So it can be just an anecdote from your first open studio experience, or it can be something that, maybe you were taught at school that, being an artist wasn't a great career choice, and then how you've overcome that, or if that still lingers with you even. So, there's lots of different things that you could be talking about, but I think social media is really the place that you can find an audience quite quickly. Mm-hmm. And, really sort of draw in those people with both the caption, but in the image as well. I'm particularly talking about Instagram, which is where I'm hanging out the most these days. But obviously that's relevant for quite a lot of the different platforms as well. I've got an online course coming out early April, which is very much around this. But it's also helping artists to particularly kind of tell their story, which is a phrase that gets used a lot as well. But it's much more about getting them comfortable talking about themselves, comfortable about talking about their journey. And that is, really sort of told through anecdotes. So the point of this little program that I'm putting together is that we sort of do that in micro blogging form for, let's say, Instagram. And then after you've got a few posts together, we weave them together to be blog content for your website. Great. And then other places that you might put that as well. But really, what it also does is builds a confidence, and it brings to the front of your mind these sort of experiences that you've been through that you can then also, if you were doing a fair or, for example, or an exhibition, then you've got them at the front of your mind. So you're actually going to be talking to people in the real world easier as well.
That's great. I love the point that you made too, that we see our own lives as kind of boring or drab or normal because that's the life we are living and that's our experience. And yet people who do not make art, and even people who do, but also collect art, we're fascinated in the stories of others. And we need to have trust that people are going to find the stories we share about our art life to be of value and interesting. And part of testing that out is to put it on social media, make an Instagram post and see what people respond to. And that's a great way to experiment and develop the stories that you use to help connect with people and talk about your art. Your program sounds really interesting.
Great, thank you.
So if people want to learn more about you or start following you, Gita, where kind of share some of the places you'd like us to go?
So you can join the Facebook group, which is Studio to Retail, and mostly that is sort of more teaching.
Okay.
You can follow me on Instagram, which is the place I'm hanging out the most these days, at the Gita Joshi. On Facebook, there is the Curator Salon page, or you can friend me on my personal page. And yeah, I think that's about it. I mean, people keep finding me on LinkedIn. I don't know where they come from. I'm not really there very much, but you know.
Yeah, me too, actually. It's funny you say that. I just got a few today and I was like, I never spend time there, but okay.
One place I forgot was the Curator Salon podcast.
Oh, yes, of course.
So that is available on iTunes and anywhere else you listen to your podcasts.
And once again, guys, I'll make sure all those links are available to you once the live is finished. And I'd love to know what you guys take away from today's conversation. Is there some kind of big aha moment, or is there something that you feel resistance to still that you want to talk about more? I'd love for you to share that takeaway or that resistance in the comments below this video so that we can continue our conversation and really help you guys get results that you seek for your art. So thank you again, Gita, for being here. It's been wonderful having you.
You're welcome, and I look forward to answering some more questions in the group.
Great. Have a great day, everyone.